My young child cautioned me about his father, but nothing could prepare me for what came afterward. I dropped my husband at the airport, convinced it was just another work trip, nothing more. The harsh white glow of Hartsfield, Jackson's lights stabbed at my tired eyes as I stood beside Quasi, pretending I was as polished and put together as he looked. His charcoal suit fit like it was sewn on. His leather briefcase swung casually from one hand, and the scent of the cologne I'd given him for his birthday drifted around us like a commercial. To anyone watching, we were the perfect image of a thriving black family. He, the rising executive. Me, the supportive wife. Our son, Kenzo, is a quiet, well-behaved 6-year-old. If only they knew. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. Kenzo's small palm was damp in mine, his fingers digging in like he was trying to anchor himself to me. Normally, my boy was reserved but curious, the kind of child who absorbed everything with big, thoughtful eyes. Tonight, he was different. Stiff. Silent. His gaze never left his father's face. "This meeting in Chicago is huge," Quasi said, pulling me in for a hug meant for the crowd, not for me. 3 days max and I'm back. Hold things down at the house, okay? Of course, I answered automatically, the smile I put on more habit than feeling. That was my role. Keep the home running, keep up appearances, while he built his kingdom. He bent down to Kenzo's level, hands resting on our son's shoulders in that practiced, loving father pose he used at church and company picnics. "You got Mom, little man? Look out for her while I'm gone." Kenzo only nodded. No grin. No yes, Dad. Just that intense stare, as if he was trying to memorize every line of his father's face. Like he knew something I didn't. Quasi kissed our son's forehead, then mine. "Love you both. See you soon." And just like that, he turned and walked toward the TSA line, confidently, easily, as if he were heading into another normal workweek instead of throwing a match at our lives. Kenzo and I stood among the crowd of hugs and luggage and rolling suitcases, watching him disappear in the sea of travelers. When I couldn't see him anymore, I exhaled, suddenly aware of the ache in my lower back and the pinch of my heels. "Come on, baby, let's go," I said, my voice heavy. I wanted to go home to Buckhead, peel off the tight dress, kick off my shoes, and numb my thoughts with some late-night TV. We started down the concourse, the polished floor echoing beneath our steps. Kenzo's grip hadn't relaxed, and his silence pressed on me. "You okay, sweetheart? You're extra quiet tonight." He didn't answer. We passed dark storefronts with security grates pulled down, flight boards scrolling departures and arrivals, people hurrying past with that airport rush in their eyes. Only when the sliding glass doors that led to the parking deck came into view did Kenzo stop. He stopped so suddenly I almost dragged him forward. "Kenzo." I turned, kneeling down so we were eye to eye. His face was pale beneath his brown skin, his eyes wide as if he'd seen a ghost. "Mama," he whispered, his voice shaking. "We can't go home." I frowned. "What do you mean we can't go home? It's late. You need sleep." He shook his head fast, tears gathering but not falling yet. "Please, Mama. Not this time. Don't go back. You gotta believe me this time. Please." Those 2 words, this time, cut deep. Because he was right. He'd warned me before. He'd told me about the same car parked in front of our house 3 nights in a row. I'd brushed it off as coincidence. He'd told me he'd overheard his daddy whispering in his office about taking care of the problem once and for all. I'd told him that grown-up business talk sounded scary sometimes but wasn't. I'd smoothed his hair and told him not to worry. And I hadn't believed him. "Tell me what's wrong," I said now, forcing calm into my voice even as my heart sped up. "All of it, Kenzo. I'm listening." He glanced around, scanning strangers' faces like he expected someone to be listening in. Then he leaned in close, his breath warm against my ear. "This morning," he murmured, "I woke up before you and Daddy. I went to get water, and I heard Daddy talking on the phone in his office. He said tonight, when we're asleep, something bad is gonna happen. He said he had to be far away when it happened. He said we weren't gonna be in his way anymore. The world tilted. Kenzo, are you sure? I whispered. You didn't mistake what he said? He nodded so hard his curls bounced. He said some men were gonna handle it. That he'd finally be free. His voice. It didn't sound like his voice, Mama. It sounded mean. Scary. My first instinct was to smooth it over again, to say he misunderstood, that his daddy loved us, that none of this made sense. But memories hit me in a rush. Quasi raising his life insurance policy a few months ago, saying it was for legacy and generational wealth. The new paperwork putting the house, the car, the savings solely in his name, just for tax reasons. His anger when I mentioned going back to work. No need, Ira. I got us. The calls taken behind the closed office door, the hushed conversations I told myself were about deals and contracts. The night 2 weeks ago when I woke to find him murmuring into his phone. It has to look like an accident. There's no other way. I'd convinced myself it was some risky investment, some corporate mess I didn't understand. Now, looking at my terrified child, I wasn't so sure. I cupped his face. Okay, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I believe you. Relief flashed across his features, but fear still sat heavy there. So what do we do? He asked. That was the question. Going back to the house suddenly felt like walking into a trap. But where else could we even go? My family was in North Carolina, hours away. All our friends were part of Quasi's world. If I was wrong, I'd be dragging my son into chaos for no reason. But if I was right, we're going to the car, I decided. But we're not going inside the house. We're going to watch from a distance. Kenzo nodded and clung to my hand again. We walked to the parking deck, the night air cool on my face. Our silver SUV sat in the corner, just where we'd left it before the flight. Safe for my family, Quasi had said when he bought it. The irony stung. I strapped Kenzo into his booster, got into the driver's seat, and fumbled with the keys until the engine came to life. Thank you for trusting me, he said softly from the back. I should have done that sooner, I answered, catching his tired eyes in the rearview mirror. I'm always going to believe you now, you hear me? He nodded, hugging his dinosaur backpack like a shield. I didn't drive down our street. Instead, I looped around behind the neighborhood, parking on a parallel road where through a gap in the trees, I could see our lawn, our front porch, the front windows that glowed warmly on normal nights when we were home watching cartoons. I cut the engine and lights. Darkness wrapped around us. We wait, I whispered. Minutes crawled by. The dashboard clock read 10:17 p.m. Doubt crept in. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was letting my imagination run wild, sitting here in the dark with my 6-year-old like some amateur spy instead of going into our home and putting him to bed. What kind of wife thinks this way about her husband? I wondered. What kind of mother hides outside instead of turning the key in her own front door? Mama, look, Kenzo said suddenly, his voice tight. A van turned onto our street. Dark paint. No logo. No front plate. The windows were so tinted they might as well have been painted black. The van crept along the curb, slow and deliberate, like it was searching for something. Or someone. It stopped directly in front of our house. My breath caught. No, I whispered, though I had nothing to back that word up with. The 2 front doors opened. 2 men got out. Both in dark clothes, hoods up. No grocery bags, no tools in hand, no boxes. They didn't look like repairmen or neighbors. They looked like men who only came out at night for bad reasons. They stood in front of our drive, scanning the area. My hand flew to my phone, my fingers itching to call 911, but I froze, staring through the windshield like this was a horror movie and not my real life. One of them reached into his pocket. I expected lock-picking tools. A crowbar. Something that would tell me this was a break-in. Something I could rationalize. Instead, he pulled out a key. Kenzo's voice shook. Mama, How do they have a key? I couldn't answer. The man walked up to our front door like he lived there. A twist. A click. No struggle. No forcing. Just an easy turn and entry into the place where my son had watched cartoons that morning, where our photos hung on the walls, where we kept Christmas decorations neatly in plastic tubs in the attic. Only 3 people had keys. Me, Quasi, and a spare locked in the office drawer. They disappeared inside. No lights turned on, but faint beams of flashlights flickered behind the curtains. They were moving room to room, doing whatever it was they were paid to do. Time warped. Minutes stretched. Meaningless. My fingers dug into the steering wheel so hard they ached, but I couldn't make myself move. Not yet. Not until I knew. Then a harsh chemical smell reached us, drifting on the night air. Kenzo scrunched his nose. What's that? Smoke followed. First, a thin grey stream rising past the living room window. Then another from the kitchen. Heat orange light began to pulse inside. Fire. No, I said, shoving my door open without thinking. Kenzo's hands grabbed at my jacket, desperate. Mama, you can't go. Please. He was right, and yet every instinct in me screamed to run into that house, to save the photo albums, the baby blanket my mother had crocheted, the drawings taped to the fridge, the wedding gown sealed in its garment bag. My whole life was inside those walls. But my child was outside them. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The van peeled away from the curb, lights off as it sped into the dark, gone before the first fire truck arrived. Flames tore through our living room, roared up the staircase, shattered glass, turned curtains to ash. In a matter of minutes, the house we'd saved and sacrificed for became a burning shell, swallowed in orange. I couldn't stand it. My knees buckled, and I fell to the curb as my son buried his face into my back, sobbing. You were right, I choked, staring at the blaze. My God, Kenzo, you were right. If we had gone inside. I couldn't finish. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Hands shaking, I pulled it out. A text. Hey babe, just landed. Hope you and Kenzo are knocked out by now. Love you guys. See you soon. Every word felt like poison. He knew. He had to. He was hundreds of miles away with a perfect alibi while 2 strangers used our key to turn our home into a furnace. My stomach heaved. I turned away from the fire and vomited into the gutter, my body trying to expel everything. Fear, shock, denial. When I could finally breathe again, I looked at my son. His cheeks were streaked with tears, but his eyes were dry now, too old for 6. He sat watching the destruction like he understood more than any child ever should. What are we going to do now, Mama? He asked quietly. I didn't know the steps yet. I only knew one thing. The man I'd promised to love had wanted us dead, and now I needed someone who actually knew how to fight men like that. That's when I remembered my father's warning and the card he'd pressed into my hand before he died. If you ever need serious help, call her. I had never understood why he didn't trust my husband. Tonight, watching my life burn, I finally did. My hands were still trembling when I dug through my wallet, breathless in the dark SUV. I found the worn business card tucked behind my driver's license, right where I'd shoved it 2 years earlier and ignored ever since. Z. Okafor, attorney at law, a phone number. Nothing else. I remembered my father's tired eyes in his hospital bed as he'd handed it over. I don't like that man you married, he'd said bluntly. If the day ever comes when you see what I see, call her. Don't argue. Don't hesitate. Just call. I'd been hurt then. Embarrassed. I'd defended Quasi. Said he'd been nothing but generous. That he'd paid for my father's treatments. That he visited nearly every day. My father just shook his head. I've been a man too long not to recognize another man's hunger. I hadn't understood. Now, staring at the charred skeleton of my home, I understood far too well. Kenzo, I said, forcing air into my lungs. Remember the card Grandpa gave me? He nodded slowly. I'm going to call the person on it, okay? She's going to help us. I hoped I wasn't telling my child a lie. I dialed with clumsy fingers. The phone rang and rang. Just when I thought it would go to voicemail, a woman's voice answered, rough with sleep but sharp. Okafor. Hello. I'm sorry it's so late. My name is Ira. My father was Langston Vance. He gave me your number and said to call if I ever needed real help. There was a beat of silence, followed by a soft exhale. Langston's girl, she said. I remember. Where are you? My house just burned down, I blurted. My voice cracked. I'm in my car nearby with my son. My husband tried to kill us. Another pause, then her tone shifted. All business now. Are you safe where you are? Can you drive? Yes, I whispered. For now. Good. Get away from that street. Write down this address. Her office was across town in a 2-story brick building wedged between an old church and a soul food restaurant in the Sweet Auburn district. It looked closed when we pulled up near midnight. The only light on was a lamp glowing behind a second-floor window. Kenzo had fallen asleep on the ride, drained by fear and tears. I carried him up the narrow staircase, my muscles aching from adrenaline and exhaustion. Before I could knock, the door opened. A woman in her early 60s stood there in jeans and a faded t-shirt, her gray locks pulled into a loose bun, reading glasses hanging from a chain. Her eyes, however, were wide awake, taking in every detail. My soot-smudged dress, Kenzo's rumpled clothes, my red-rimmed eyes. You must be Ira, she said. Come in. Quickly. Inside smelled like old paper and strong coffee. File boxes were stacked everywhere, heavy wooden cabinets lined the walls, and a cluttered desk dominated the center of the room. Lay the boy on that sofa, she instructed, pointing. There's a blanket. I settled Kenzo down, tucking the blanket around his shoulders. He didn't wake. Sit, she said, already pouring coffee into 2 chipped mugs. Start at the beginning. Don't leave anything out. No matter how small it seems. I sat, hands cupped around the hot mug, and I told her. About the airport. About Kenzo's whisper. About our decision to watch the house. About the van. The key. The fire. The text message from Chicago. She didn't interrupt. Not once. Her gaze stayed locked on my face, her hands folded under her chin. When I finished, my throat felt raw. She leaned back slowly. Your father was right not to trust your husband, she said. He told me years ago he thought the man you married was dangerous underneath all that polish. He hired me because he wanted a safety net for you and any grandchildren. I swallowed hard. He never said that to me. He knew you were in love, she said simply. It's hard to get between a daughter and her idea of happiness. She stood and walked to a locked cabinet in the corner, pulled out a thick manila folder, and dropped it onto the desk in front of us. Your father also hired a private investigator 3 years ago to look into Quasi's business dealings. Not because he wanted to snoop, but because he saw warning signs. I hoped we'd never need this. She opened the folder. Bank statements. Photos. Reports. Names of casinos and shadowy loans. Page after page of quiet disaster. My chest tightened. What is all this? Your husband has been drowning in gambling debt for a long time, she said flatly. He's been borrowing from people who don't exactly send polite reminders when the payments are late. She flipped through more pages, tapping one with a red circle. His businesses have been failing for at least 2 years. On paper, he looked successful. In reality, he was robbing Peter to pay Paul. And he used every cent of the inheritance your mother left you to plug holes. My stomach lurched. My mother's nest egg. The money I'd put into a joint account because I'd believed in the words "what's mine is ours." Every cent. I choked. Down to the last dollar, she confirmed. And now the people he owes want their money back, with interest. But I don't have that kind of money, I protested weakly. We don't. You don't, she agreed. But your life insurance policy does. I stared at her. My what? Your father insisted you take out a large policy when you married, she said. $2.5 million. You put Quasi as beneficiary after Kenzo was born, yes. I remembered the forms, my father's insistence, Quasi's initial reluctance that turned into enthusiasm once he understood the payout size. At the time, it had felt like responsible planning. If you died in a tragic accident, she continued, your husband would get the money. Enough to clear his debts and start fresh. My hands shook around the mug. Are you saying he tried to burn us alive, for a payout? I'm saying he saw you and your son as collateral, she replied. And a house fire is neat, clean, often chalked up to faulty wiring or gas leaks. Hard to prove otherwise if the job is done right. Combine that with a documented business trip and a flight to another state, and you have a nearly perfect alibi. But we didn't die, I whispered. And he doesn't know that yet. Her eyes sharpened. Exactly. She leaned forward. If you walk into the nearest police station right now and say your husband hired men to kill you, what do you have to back it up besides what you and a terrified 6-year-old witnessed from a car? I lowered my eyes. Nothing. The men who set your house on fire will have been careful, she went on. No obvious trail. No simple connection back to him. If you go in with only your word, Quasi will play the grieving husband and turn this around on you. He'll say the trauma made you imagine things. That you're unstable. So what do? I asked, frustration leaking into my voice. I have no ID. No house. No money. A kid who's already seen too much. And a husband who will be back by tomorrow. You have me, she said calmly. And I have something he doesn't know I have. What's that? Information, she said simply. And time. She stood, glancing toward the sofa where Kenzo slept. He'll land in Atlanta in a few hours. The news will show that your house burned. He'll cry for the cameras and demand answers. He'll ask if any bodies have been found. Eventually, someone will tell him they haven't located you or Kenzo. And then? I asked. And then he'll realize his plan went sideways, she said. That fire didn't finish the job. That you might be alive. And he'll panic. How does that help us? I asked. Because when people like him panic, they slip, she replied. Right now we need proof. Anything tying him directly to the men who torched your house. Let me ask you, does he have a safe in the house? A lockbox. Somewhere he keeps important documents or cash. I thought of his office upstairs. The painting on the wall, the combination he never bothered hiding. He has a wall safe. His birthday is the code. He keeps things in there, but I've never gone through it. We need what's inside, she said. Cash, burner phones, notes. These men like to feel in control. They document more than they should. The house is full of investigators, I reminded her. The fire department, police, neighbors, cameras. We can't just walk back in. Not now, she agreed. But they won't be there all night. When he finally leaves for a hotel or a friend's place, we go. You know the layout. I know how to stay invisible. We won't be long. A knot formed in my stomach. You want me to sneak into my burned house like some criminal? She lifted a brow. You live there. Technically, it's still your property. And you're not a criminal. You're a wife trying to stay alive. And Kenzo? I asked quickly. He stays here. I won't drag him back into that. From the sofa, a small voice spoke up. I'm not staying. We both turned. Kenzo was sitting up, eyes clearer than they had any right to be after a night like this. There are places in the house you don't know, Mama, he said quietly. Daddy hides things. Under the floor. Behind the bookshelves. I've seen. Okafor studied him for a long moment, then gave a short nod. Children notice everything adults are too busy to see, she said. If he says there are hiding spots, I believe him. I didn't like it. Every part of me wanted Kenzo to stay wrapped in that blanket, far away from danger. But the truth was, he'd already been dragged into this. And we needed any advantage we could get. The two of you can stay in the back room tonight, she said. It's small, but the door locks. Rest while you can. Tomorrow we move. As I lay on the narrow bed, staring at the dark ceiling, sleep came in jagged pieces. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flames climbing the walls of our house and heard my husband's text tone chiming like a taunt. By morning, the story was all over the local news. Luxury Buckhead home destroyed by overnight fire. Family presumed inside. They showed aerial shots, smoke still rising, firefighters sifting through debris. Then they showed him, Quasi, stumbling out of an Uber in wrinkled clothes, face contorted in a performance of grief. My wife and son, he shouted, grabbing at an officer's arm. Please tell me they weren't in there. The reporter's voice was solemn. Mr. Vance had just returned from a business trip when he learned his house was destroyed. Authorities are still searching for any sign of his wife and child. I watched the screen in Okafor's office, gripping the edge of the chair. He paced in front of the cameras, shouting, demanding, asking if they'd found bodies yet. The words slithered through me. Not my family. Not my wife and son. Bodies. I saw it now. That slight glance to the camera before he yelled, the way his shoulders squared like he was stepping onto a stage. His eyes were dry whenever his hands left his face. He's acting, Kenzo whispered from beside me. He doesn't look scared. He looks mad. And kept checking if your remains turned up, Okafor added dryly, reaching for the remote to shut off the TV. He wants confirmation his problem is gone. She checked her watch. We have a small window. He'll cling to the scene as long as cameras are rolling, but eventually he'll have to leave. He won't sleep in a burned-out shell. When he goes, we go. All day, we monitored from her office. She had access to footage from neighborhood security cameras thanks to an old client who installed them. We watched Quasi give multiple interviews, saw him follow the investigators around, saw him talk to neighbors, collecting sympathy. Finally, as the sun dipped low, we watched him climb into another car and drive away. Okafor stood. It's time. The plan made me feel like I'd walked into someone else's life. Okafor dressed us in plain dark clothes, handed us light gloves and small flashlights, and went over the steps again. We're not heroes, she said firmly. We're not there to confront him or anyone else. We're in to gather and out again. 20 minutes at most. If anything feels off, we leave. Understood. I nodded, though everything in me screamed that this was insane. Kenzo, too small in his black hoodie, nodded as well, eyes set and serious. We didn't drive up to the front. Okafor parked several blocks away, near a back access point she knew from representing the neighborhood's developer years ago. A low section of the wall, overgrown with bushes, sat where most people never looked. Benefits of knowing too much about rich men's secrets, she muttered, pushing branches aside. She climbed first, then helped me up. We lifted Kenzo over carefully. On the other side, the air smelled like wet ash and living things, a strange blend of destruction and ordinary night. The house was a dark silhouette against the sky, with sections of roof caved in and blackened walls exposed. Tape fluttered near the front, but the backyard was quiet, no lights, no officers. 20 minutes, Okafor whispered. I'll stay near the back fence, watching. If I scream, you run. Don't stop to think. Go. My heart hammered against my ribs. I took Kenzo's hand. We crossed the yard to the kitchen door, the one fire crews had forced open. The door still hung on one hinge, warped and charred. We stepped inside. The smell hit first, burnt plastic, wet wood, something acrid and chemical. The kitchen was almost unrecognizable. The cabinets were scorched, the counters warped, dishes shattered on the floor. The fridge stood blackened but still humming faintly, absurd in its persistence. I swallowed the urge to cry. We don't have time for that, I reminded myself under my breath. Office. Baby. Which way? Kenzo led the way through the remains of the living room, past the fireplace that had somehow survived while everything around it did not. We stepped carefully on the stairs, some steps partially burned away, others waterlogged. Quasi's office at the top of the stairs sat in eerie contrast to the rest of the house. The door was scorched, but the room itself had escaped the worst of the flames, save for smoke stains and fallen plaster. The painting that had once covered the safe was gone, collapsed in a charred frame on the floor. The metal door to the safe was exposed. I punched in his birth date, hands slick inside the gloves. A beep. A green light. The door swung open. Inside lay stacks of banded cash, some documents, and a cheap, old-model cell phone, the kind you bought with cash and tossed after a few calls. My heart pounded. I grabbed everything, shoving it into the backpack Okafor had given me. "Mama," Kenzo hissed from across the office. "Over here." He was crouched by the far wall near the desk, fingers working at a loose floorboard I'd never even noticed. Together, we pried it up. Beneath it, wrapped in a plastic bag, were another phone, a slim black notebook, and a sealed envelope. "Take it all," I whispered. We stuffed the bag full and turned to leave. Voices floated up from below. "You sure they're not still poking around?" a deep voice asked. "Yeah," another replied. "Cops cleared the place earlier. We're just here to double-check." I froze. Kenzo's fingers dug into my wrist. Boots creaked on the stairs. The beam of a flashlight swept across the hall. "Office was this way, right?" the deeper voice said. "Yeah," the boss said to make sure nothing got messed with. Panic surged, but there was nowhere to go. The window in the office was stuck, the drop too high even if it opened. The only exit was the door. I grabbed Kenzo and pulled him into the closet. We squeezed among hanging clothes and boxes, leaving the narrow slits in the door as our only view. The office door swung open with a groan. A flashlight beam sliced through the dark, pausing on the open safe. "Yo, Marcus," the first voice said. "Check this out." Another set of footsteps entered. "Something wrong. Safe's open. Wasn't like that when we lit this place up." "You sure?" the second man asked, his accent heavier. "Dead sure," the first snapped. "We didn't touch his stash. Just did the job, got out." Silence stretched, heavy and tense. "That means someone's been here," the one called Marcus said eventually. "Recently." The flashlight swept across the floor, catching disturbed dust and small prints. "Look," he said, pointing. "These footprints are tiny." "Kid-sized," the first muttered. "You thinking what I'm thinking? That the wife and the kid might have slipped out?" Marcus said. "Yeah. And if they took anything from the safe, we'd have a bigger mess than we thought." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the boss." I pressed my back into the closet wall, nails biting my palms through the gloves. If they called Quasi now and told him someone had been here, he'd know we were alive. He'd know we knew. Downstairs, a woman's scream tore through the air, sharp and terrified. "What the?" the first man blurted. "That came from outside," Marcus said, already moving. "Let's check." They bolted down the stairs, flashlights bouncing, curses fading. I didn't wait. I yanked open the closet, grabbed Kenzo's hand, and ran. This time, I didn't bother avoiding creaks or puddles. We flew down the stairs, out through the ruined kitchen, and across the yard. Okafor was at the back wall, chest heaving. "Is that loud enough for you?" she asked between breaths. "That was you," I gasped. "How else was I supposed to distract hired arsonists without getting shot?" she snapped lightly. "You get what we came for?" I lifted the backpack. "All of it." She boosted Kenzo up, then me. We dropped over the other side and sprinted to the car 2 blocks away. Only when we were speeding off did I finally let myself shake. "They saw the safe was open," I said, staring out the window. They knew someone had been there. They saw Kenzo's footprints. They're going to tell Quasi. Good, Okafor said. I stared at her. Good. He'd find out eventually, she replied calmly. This way, he learns it in a way we can use. Back at the office, we emptied the backpack onto her desk. Money, phones, papers, the slim black notebook. She reached for that first. If the safe had been the stomach of the operation, this notebook was the heart. Page after page of cramped handwriting detailed debts owed, amounts borrowed, names of lenders, timestamps, casino addresses, notes about threats. It wasn't polished accounting. It was a desperate man's way of keeping track of the sharks circling him. And scribbled near the back, underlined twice, was a phrase that made my skin crawl. Final solution. A's policy. 2.5 m. Must look accidental. Below that, bullet points. Fire. Best option. Hard to tie to me. Must be gone when it happens. Contact Marcus. Fee 50k. Half up front. Schedule for night of November 21st while on trip. This is everything, I whispered, my mouth dry. He wrote down his entire plan. Men like him like leverage, Okafor said, flipping to another page. If the men he hired turned on him, he could use this to bring them down too. Greedy people never think they'll be the ones caught. She set the notebook aside and picked up one of the phones. If we're lucky, these will be even worse. They were locked. Okafor made a call to someone she referred to only as my tech guy. Less than an hour later, a sleepy voice on speaker walked her through bypassing the basic security on both devices. Once they were open, the evidence spilled out. Text messages from Quasi to a contact labeled only with an initial. Negotiations about timing. Need it done while I'm out of state. Has to look like an accident. No witnesses. Replies from the man we now knew as Marcus. We don't do half jobs. Fire's clean. You sure you want the kid included? Extra for both. Quasi's answer was a punch to the gut. Do what you have to do. I just need it finished. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. He was fine with killing our son, I said numbly. Like it was nothing. Okafor placed the phone aside. We now have a written plan, a record of payment, and clear communication tying him to the men who set your house on fire, she said. That's attempted murder. Arson. Insurance fraud. A long list. Is it enough to lock him away? I asked. It's more than enough, she said. But we still need to be careful. If we hand this to the wrong detective, it could disappear. Or worse, word could get back to him before we're ready. My own phone buzzed on the desk. I'd forgotten to turn it off. It was lit up with missed calls and messages from Quasi. Ira, where are you? Please tell me you're okay. I'm losing my mind. Police said they didn't find your bodies. Answer me. Are you hurt? I know you're alive. I know you were at the house. We need to talk. The last one made my skin crawl. He knows, I whispered. He knows we took something. Good, Okafor repeated. Answer him. I stared at her. Absolutely not. Just enough to bring him out into the open, she said. If he thinks he can still manipulate you, he'll come. And when he comes, we'll be ready with people watching and recording. My stomach churned. You want me to meet with him? In person. In a public place. Broad daylight. Surrounded by officers who know exactly what he did. She leaned forward. I have a contact in homicide. Detective Hightower. He's honest. If we give him the evidence and your story, he'll take it seriously. But seeing how your husband behaves when he thinks he can talk his way out of this will be invaluable. So I text him and say what? I asked hollowly. That you want to meet. Somewhere open. Somewhere he can't pull any sudden moves without witnesses. Let him think you're scared but undecided. Desperate for answers. The more he believes he still has a hold on you, the sloppier he'll be. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Finally, I typed. Centennial Olympic Park. By the fountain. Tomorrow at 10. Come alone. The response came almost immediately. I'll be there. Things aren't what you think. Of course that's what he'd say. I set the phone down, hands still shaking. Get some rest, Okafor said softly. Tomorrow, you'll have to look the man who tried to erase you straight in the face. But you won't be doing it alone this time. I lay awake most of the night, replaying the last 8 years of my marriage like a movie. Every time I had chalked something strange up to stress. Every time my father had gently warned me. Every time I'd silenced the little voice in my head that said, something doesn't feel right. In the morning, that voice was louder than ever. By 9:30 a.m., I was sitting on a bench in Centennial Olympic Park, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the sound of nearby traffic and people. The fountain sprayed arcs of water beside me, kids ran laughing across the grass, and tourists pointed their phones at sculptures. I had a small wired microphone taped beneath my jacket, the cord running to a device tucked discreetly into my pocket. Detective Hightower's voice crackled in my ear through an earpiece. We see you, he said calmly. You're doing great. Remember, you're not here to convince him of anything. You're here to listen and stay alive. We'll take care of the rest. I scanned the area without turning my head. A man selling hot dogs at a cart. A woman pushing a stroller. A pair of joggers stretching by a tree. Tourists snapping photos. Underneath that normal surface were plainclothes officers, Hightower's team scattered in a wide circle. Kenzo, meanwhile, was back at Okafor's office, safe, watching everything through a live video feed. The thought both comforted and knotted my stomach. I didn't want him to see his father like this. But I wanted even less for him to wonder. Then I saw Quasi. He walked briskly along the sidewalk, scanning the crowd. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair slightly out of place, his jaw shadowed with stubble. For the first time in years, he didn't look polished. He looked worn, frayed at the edges. When his eyes landed on me, his shoulders sagged in visible relief. He hurried over and reached for me like we were still us. Ira, he said, voice thick. Thank God. I thought. I stepped back before he could hug me. He froze, a flash of irritation crossing his face before he arranged it into concern again. Don't touch me, I said quietly. His gaze flicked around, taking in the park, the people. We shouldn't talk here, he said. Let's go somewhere private. I almost laughed. You wanted privacy last night, I said. I saw what privacy looks like with you. His jaw tightened. You don't understand. I'm in trouble. There are people after me. You and Kenzo could be in serious danger. We are in serious danger, I cut in. Because you hired men to burn us alive in our sleep. He blinked, the lie forming behind his eyes before he even opened his mouth. Ira, no. That's not. We watched it happen, I said. From the car. We saw the van. We saw them use our key. We saw the flames. And then I got your text, right on time, checking if we were sleeping well. His lips parted, then closed again. He looked away briefly, then back at me. I had no idea they were going to do that, he said, voice lowering. I'm in debt, yes. I told you that. They said they were just going to scare you. Rough you up so I'd cooperate. I would never. Your notebook says otherwise, I interrupted. The one where you wrote down all your debts and your final solution. My life insurance. The payments to Marcus. The date. The plan. The part where you wrote that our deaths had to look like an accident. His mouth opened, then shut. His eyes darted, searching, calculating. You broke into my office, he said slowly. You took my things. It's called surviving, I said. His composure cracked. Anger slipped through like smoke. You don't know what you've done, he hissed. You give that evidence to the cops, I'm finished. And if I go down, those men are coming after you next. They're not going to pat you on the head and say, "Good job." They'll make you wish. At least they didn't marry me and pretend to love me for 8 years, I snapped. At least they didn't look at our son and call him an inconvenience. He flinched, then sneered. You really thought this marriage was some fairy tale? You were a sheltered girl with money and a big house. You were an opportunity, Ira. That's all. Don't act surprised. The words burned, even though part of me had suspected it for a long time. And Kenzo? I asked quietly. What was he? A prop for photos? A pawn? His face twisted. That weird little boy. Always staring, never talking? He was just one more thing to factor into the equation. I told Marcus to get it done clean. No survivors. That's how this world works. Somewhere far away, I heard Hightower's voice in my ear. We have more than enough. The casual way Quasi admitted it, here in the open, made bile rise in my throat. You were willing to kill your own son, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. For money. For freedom from the life you built. His eyes went cold. You talk like you're some saint, he said. You enjoyed the lifestyle. The house. The car. You didn't mind where the money came from as long as the bills were paid. I minded, I said. I just ignored what my gut told me because I loved you. He snorted. You loved a story you told yourself. Not me. He took a step closer. Instinctively, I stepped back. Here's what's going to happen, he said quietly, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. You're going to give me back everything you took from that safe. The notebook. The phones. The cash. Then you're going to keep your mouth shut, take our son, and disappear. I'll tell the cops the grief made me lose it. I'll rebuild. You'll stay breathing. Everybody wins. Everybody but the truth, I said. And I'm done living with lies. His gaze hardened. The concern dropped completely now, leaving only hardness. You think a few cops in a park can protect you forever? He asked. You have no idea how deep this goes. I don't need protection forever, I said. I just need enough time to make sure you can't hurt anyone else. His eyes narrowed. Are you really going to throw away my life over one mistake? He asked. One mistake. My voice rose. You tried to burn me and your son alive in our beds. He grabbed my wrist. Pain shot up my arm. Before I could yank back, Hightower appeared out of nowhere, badge flashing. Quasi Vance, he announced. You're under arrest for attempted murder, arson, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. Put your hands where I can see them. Other tourists, nearby suddenly weren't tourists anymore. Officers closed in from all sides. Quasi's eyes darted between them, then back to me. For a second, fear cracked through his mask. Then something else, pure, stubborn refusal. He yanked me toward him, and I felt a cold edge at my throat. My breath hitched. Everybody back up, he shouted. You take one more step, I'll slit her throat. The knife bit just enough for me to feel a sting. Hightower's face went grim. He lifted his hands, stopping the officers around us. Quasi, he said evenly. This is not the move you want to make. You let her go, we talk about what happens next. You hurt her, it only gets worse. She ruined everything, Quasi snarled behind my ear. There's nothing left to talk about. He pressed the blade harder. I felt a trickle of warmth. People around us froze. Somewhere behind, a child cried. Listen to me, I said, my voice shaking but steady enough. You're not going to do this. Don't tell me what I'm going to do, he snapped. You're a coward, I said quietly. Anger, grief, and something like clarity flooded me. You didn't even have the nerve to do it yourself. You paid someone else to kill us while you pretended to be a loving father on a business trip. Cowards don't finish what they start if they have to look their victims in the eye. He hesitated. Barely. But it was enough. A crack split the air. The knife flew from his hand. He screamed, jerking back as he clutched his wrist. I stumbled away, blood rushing back into my limbs. Snipers I hadn't seen moved into focus on nearby rooftops, their scopes lowering. In seconds, officers swarmed him. He kicked, cursed, and tried to twist free. It didn't matter. The cuffs clicked shut. "This isn't over," he yelled as they dragged him toward a patrol car. "You're going to regret this, Ira. You hear me? You're going to pay." His words lost their power the moment the car door slammed. My knees buckled. Hightower caught my arm, steadying me. "It's over," he said softly. "At least this part is." I wasn't sure I believed him yet. The cut at my neck stung, my legs felt like water, and my brain buzzed with a jumble of past and present, but I was alive. My son was alive. And the man who had tried to erase us was finally where he belonged. The trial moved faster than I thought it would. With the notebook, the text messages, the burner phones, and the recording from our meeting in the park, there wasn't much Quasi's lawyer could do. Marcus and the other arsonist flipped almost immediately, trading their testimonies for reduced sentences. They told the jury about the planning sessions, the payment, the instructions to make sure no one survived. The defense tried to paint Quasi as desperate and manipulated, pushed by loan sharks into a horrible decision. They hinted at mental strain, gambling addiction, stress. None of that changed the fact that he'd chosen to solve his problems by turning his wife and child into ash. I didn't sit through every moment. I testified once, shaking but clear. So did Kenzo, in a closed session with support staff and a judge who spoke gently and slowly. After that, our attorney and Hightower came to us with updates instead. On the day of sentencing, I stayed home. Okafor went to my place, then called as soon as it was done. 25 years minimum, she said. No early release. They stacked the charges. He won't be seeing the outside of a prison yard for a very long time. I sat in silence for a few breaths, letting the words sink in. There was no joy in them. No triumph. Just a heavy, quiet relief. "Thank you," I said, my voice rough. "Don't thank me," she replied. "Thank your father for insisting on your insurance. Thank your son for trusting his instincts. Thank yourself for listening when it mattered." After we hung up, I walked into the small apartment I'd rented for us temporarily and found Kenzo building something out of blocks on the floor. "Baby," I said, sinking onto the couch. "They gave Daddy 25 years. He paused, looking up. "So, he's not coming back?" I shook my head. "Not for a long time." He nodded, processing. "Okay," he said quietly, and went back to the building. A tower, tall and straight, reaching toward the ceiling. For the first time in months, I let myself imagine a future that didn't feature looking over my shoulder at every shadow. Rebuilding a life starts with small, boring things no one ever posts online. Replacing paperwork, applying for new IDs, figuring out housing, learning how to sleep without waking to the imagined sound of fire. Insurance from the house helped. The policy Quasi had hoped to collect on my death instead helped me secure a modest home for Kenzo and me. Okafor guided me through the maze of forms and hearings like she'd done it 100 times, which she probably had. More than that, she stayed. After the courthouse days ended, she didn't just disappear back into her old caseload. She checked in. Brought meals when I couldn't face cooking. Took Kenzo for ice cream when I had to fill out yet another stack of documents. "My father knew I'd need you," I told her once, sitting in her office months later. "How did he know?" "He saw who your husband really was long before you did," she said. "He noticed how Quasi reacted whenever money came up. How he talked about your inheritance more than he talked about you. He didn't want to be right. But he prepared in case he was." I thought about that a lot. About the quiet ways fathers protect their daughters even while letting them learn their own painful lessons. Kenzo started therapy soon after the trial. The first sessions were silent. He sat on the couch, arms folded, refusing to talk. The therapist was patient. They played games. Draw pictures. Slowly, he began to share pieces of what he'd seen and felt. Children are resilient, she told me after one appointment. He's had a hard start, but he has something powerful in his corner. He has you. He has adults who believe him. Nights were still the hardest. There were times his screams yanked me out of sleep, and I ran to his room to find him sweating, eyes wide, whispering about flames and locked doors and footsteps in the hallway. On those nights, I'd sit with him until his breathing slowed, humming the same hymns my mother had once sung to me. One night, after things had settled somewhat, he asked me a question I wasn't ready for. "Mama," he said, his head resting on my shoulder, "do you still love Daddy?" The air left my lungs for a moment. "Why do you ask?" He hesitated. "Sometimes I miss him. Not the burn the house Daddy. The Daddy who used to push me on the swings and bring me candy when he came home. Does that make me bad?" Tears burned behind my eyes. I turned to him. "Missing who you thought someone was doesn't make you bad," I said. "You're allowed to miss the good moments. You're allowed to be angry, too. Feelings are messy. They don't come one by one." "Do you miss him?" he asked softly. I thought about it. About the version of Quasi I'd fallen in love with. About the nights we'd laughed on the couch before the secrets grew too big. "I miss who I believed he was," I admitted. "But that man never really existed. And knowing that makes it easier to let go." He nodded slowly. "I saved us, right?" "You did," I said firmly. "You are the reason we're here. You're my hero." He smiled, a small real smile that reached his eyes. In that moment, I knew we were walking towards something better, even if the path was long. I went back to work, something Quasi had always discouraged. I found a job at a non-profit in Atlanta that supported women leaving abusive or dangerous relationships. I read case files and saw pieces of myself in all of them. The rationalizations, the fear, the shame. When I sat across from them and said, "It's not your fault," I meant it. A year later, Okafor surprised me with an offer. "You've got a mind for this," she said, tossing a brochure for an accelerated law program onto her desk. "And more importantly, you've got fire where it counts. Come work with me. Go to law school. Help me fight for women like the one you used to be." The idea scared me. I was in my mid-30s. I hadn't studied seriously in years. But the thought of sitting on the sidelines while others fought made me feel worse. So I enrolled. It wasn't easy. There were late nights, early mornings, moments when I thought my brain might actually melt from the information. But every exam I passed was another step away from the version of myself that had relied on someone else for everything. Years passed faster than I expected. I passed the Georgia bar. My hands shook, signing my name on the final line. Okafor, Auntie Z now, clapped me on the back so hard I almost dropped the pen. "Your father would be proud," she said. Probably insufferable about it, too. Kenzo grew. He traded superhero pajamas for science posters, toy cars for STEM kits. He lost the haunted look he'd carried for so long and replaced it with a quiet, determined focus. "Engineering," he announced one day when he was 11, sprawled on the living room rug with blueprints he'd drawn himself. "Or architecture. Maybe both. I want to build things that last." I smiled. "After what you've lived through, I believe you can build anything." 5 years after that night at the airport, I sat on the porch of a small but bright house on the outskirts of the city, sipping coffee and watching the morning sky blush pink and gold. The house wasn't fancy. It didn't have marble countertops or a gated entrance. It didn't need to. It was ours. Paid for with honest money and hard work, not someone else's lies. From inside, I heard papers rustle and the scratch of a pencil. "Mama," Kenzo called. "Can I go to Malik's after lunch?" "Sure," I called back. "Be home before 6. Got it. I smiled into my mug. He had friends now. He went on sleepovers. He argued about which superhero movie was best. He complained about homework like every other kid. There were still shadows, of course. Some nights, I'd wake sweating, heart racing from dreams of heat and smoke. Sometimes, a man in a crowd would move just like Quasi used to, and my stomach would drop before my brain caught up. Healing isn't a straight line. My phone buzzed. It was a message from a support group I facilitated for survivors. Thank you for tonight's meeting. For the first time, I don't feel crazy. I typed back, "You're not crazy. You're brave. And you're not alone." A second later, another message came through, this one from Auntie Z. "Protection order granted. Our client and her kids are safe. You did good work." I set the phone down, warmth spreading through my chest. This was my life now. Helping other women recognize the signs I had ignored. Helping them get to safety before "I'm worried" turned into "I barely survived." Mama. Kenzo appeared in the doorway, taller now, his features sharper but his eyes still the same deep shade they'd been when he grabbed my hand at the airport and saved us. "Can I ask you something?" I motioned for him to sit beside me. He dropped into the chair, knees bumping mine. "Are you happy?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. "Yeah," I said slowly. "I am." "Why?" He shrugged. "Just thinking. Sometimes I remember. You know. The fire. The yelling. Court. I used to worry you'd stay sad forever." "I was sad for a while," I admitted. "Really sad. And I still have bad days sometimes. But I'm also grateful. I have you. I have a job that means something. I have people I can trust. And none of that came from pretending everything was okay. It came from starting over." He nodded, quietly absorbing that. "Do you forgive him?" he asked. I thought about it. "I don't know if forgiveness is the right word," I said. "I don't wish him dead. I don't spend my days plotting revenge. I let go of carrying him in my mind all the time. Maybe that's a kind of forgiveness. Or maybe it's just choosing myself instead." "I think I did that too," he said. "Some days I miss the fun stuff. But when I remember what he did, I don't feel as guilty for being mad." "That's okay," I said. "You're allowed to feel both." He leaned against my shoulder for a moment, taller than he'd been last year, heavier with growing bones and new muscles. "I'm glad you believed me," he murmured. "So am I," I said. "You changed our lives that day." He smiled, then pushed to his feet. "I'm going to finish my homework so I can leave faster." I watched him go back inside, humming under his breath, and thought about how different our lives might have been if I'd brushed him off at the airport. If I had told him, "Stop worrying. Daddy loves us." Sometimes, the people we love most are the ones we least want to suspect. But ignoring red flags doesn't make them disappear. It just puts us in the path of the fire. Later that day, we ate a quiet lunch, spaghetti, his favorite, argued playfully about how much sauce was too much, and laughed over a silly video he showed me. After he left for his friend's house, I cleaned the kitchen, answered work emails, and prepared for our next support group meeting. When evening fell and he came home, we watched a movie together, something animated and ridiculous. He insisted he was too old for it, then laughed the loudest. That night when I tucked him in, yes, he still let me do that, even if he rolled his eyes. He hugged me tightly before turning over. "Good night, Mama," he said. "Love you." "Good night, my hero," I replied. "Love you more." I closed his door and stood in the hallway for a long moment, listening to the quiet of our small, safe house. 5 years earlier, my life went up in flames. I thought I'd lost everything. Instead, I'd been given a brutal, undeniable kind of freedom. Freedom to see clearly. Freedom to choose myself and my child. Freedom to build a life rooted in truth instead of performance. Did it hurt? Yes. Sometimes it still did. But as I turned off the lights and walked to my own bed, I knew one thing for certain. We survived. We didn't just survive. We grew. And now, as I sit here sharing this story with you, I hope that if you ever feel that small voice in your gut whispering something isn't right, you'll listen. I hope you'll reach out. I hope you'll find your own version of a grandpa's card and an attorney in an old brick building who believes you. If this story touched you, let me know where you're listening from in the comments. Your support helps me keep bringing real-life stories of survival and strength. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. And right now on your screen, you'll see 2 more life stories I think you'll want to hear.